I'm Jeremy, one of the developers here. We got a great panel for everybody today. So just before we hand it off to the people up here, and just want to give you a little bit of context about the journey our company has been through and some of the changes that we've been through as a company. So Achiever started in 2002 as a SaaS company, providing a recognition platform that employees could engage their employees at work. After some periods of branding and growth, we were acquired in 2015 by Blackhawk Network, and with any acquisition that comes with a lot of changes. That came with a lot of changes rippling throughout all areas of the company. In that time frame, we've actually had four people in the GM/CEO position, which is a lot of changes in upper leadership, and that means a lot of changes in strategy, a lot of changes in personnel, a lot of changes everywhere. Since then, we've also developed a new engagement platform called Listen, which some people will talk about today. That was developed entirely from the ground up in parallel with our recognition platform. So a lot of technical challenges there as well. Since then, we've also had to deal with the kind of normal changes of scaling up and growth, which means a lot of problems with dealing with scalability. How do we deal with more users, more people, and how do we deal with hiring more people and still keeping the culture of Achievers the same way that we want to, not losing that kind of core values that made Achievers what it was to work with. So with that little history lesson out of the way, I'll hand it off to Larissa, one of our other developers, and we can get started with the panel.
All right. So a great synopsis there of a little bit of context as to what Achiever's been through the past 3 years. So first off, Jeremy and I are your moderators. We are both on the development team here at Achievers. We have a lovely group of panelists here who are going to be talking about their unique perspectives as to some of the changes we've gone through at Achievers. So I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Hi, so I'm Amanda Lung. I'm a technical product manager here at Achievers. I've been at the company for almost 5 years, which is a long time.
Yep. Hi, my name is Amit. I'm the Senior Director of Engineering, and I've been here for about 3 years. A very exciting 3 years, a lot of changes, and that's what we're talking about today.
Hi, I'm Lynn. I am a software engineer, and I've been here for a little bit over 3 years, and I, too, was here through some exciting times.
Hi, my name is Mariam. I've been with Achievers about August 2nd will be my 8 years anniversary. I'm software architecture and I'm managing architecture and system team.
Nice. My name's Neil. I am a senior engineering manager and I have been at Achievers for 6 amazing years.
Wow. So, before we get started, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the context of the panel. So, around change, there's a lot of unique reactions that might arise. There's been theories around a concept called the change curve that basically shows the reactions that might happen and the flow of reactions that might happen when people are confronted with change. This might vary between shock, fear, hesitation, resistance. Ultimately, change isn't comfortable. It's not going to be something that people are usually accepting of or wanting to happen. So that's why it's important to have an effective change management plan. So research shows that with an effective change management plan, ideas are approximately 5 times more likely to be successful. And what a change management plan should do is facilitate dealing with unique reactions surrounding change and eventually help people move from these feelings of discomfort into more positive feelings. So, here at Achievers, we think that in order to help people react well to change, you need to answer 3 questions. Number 1, why change? Number 2, who and what is impacted by the change? And number 3, how will you support the change moving forward? So we're just going to start off with talking about why change. So when talking about why somebody should make a change and basically proving your case for change, you need to make sure everybody is on the same page. Everyone is unified in your goals. And that you're making a convincing argument for change. So very recently, Achievers started a new large project to redesign our platform from the ground up, both visually and technically. So Amanda has been very close to this product, or this project as a product manager. So I just was wondering, could you talk a little bit about what your initial reactions were to this revamp?
Sure, yeah. And just to give you guys a bit of context here, so we have a pretty incredible platform. We see really healthy adoption numbers, we see really healthy usage stats, but as a company, we know we need to evolve in order to continue to meet the needs and expectations of our users and just of employees in general. So we've taken on this initiative to completely transform our platform. So it's been a large undertaking. And in terms of my initial reaction, I think as with all big change, it was a mix of excitement because the business was finally making this a priority. It was saying, yes, we're willing to do this, and yes, we're going to give you the resources that you need to make this change. But also there was a bit of nervousness. I just remember my mind going into overdrive thinking, oh gosh, like, gosh was not the 4-letter word that I used there, but we'll go with gosh for now. But like, oh gosh, like how am I going to make this happen? Like how am I going to get a team of developers together? How am I going to find a UX designer to help me with this project? So it was definitely a mix of excitement and nervousness.
Yeah, so it's, even as a person who's super committed to the project and who sees the need for it, you still kind of are confronted with these feelings of discomfort and maybe anxiety around the change.
For sure. There was definitely a lot of doubts, not only from myself, but from others that I was talking to. And I think it's always hard as a human being to hear others questioning the work that you're doing. But it's also very important for you to talk through those doubts, to address them so that they're not festering and that they won't negatively impact productivity and team morale later on.
Right. So it'd be very easy for Achievers to just keep going how we're going. Like, if it's not broke, why fix it? And I'm sure, like you experienced doubts initially, other people in the company are also experiencing similar feelings. So how did you help explain the necessity of the project to different people in the company that would be affected, like customer-facing, engineers, etc.?
Yeah, I learned that over-communication was not something that I had to worry about. It became very obvious to me that I had to emphasize over and over again why we were making this change and what benefits it had to the larger company. I also realized too that my communication to the different teams had to be tailored. So as an example, I couldn't go to the sales team and talk about how they would benefit from less technical debt with this change because, like, quite frankly, an account executive is like, I don't care about technical debt. Don't talk to me about that. So I realized very soon that I had to over-communicate, and I also had to tailor my communication to each department within the company.
So making sure that you understand where the person that you're communicating to is coming from is just as important as the communication itself.
Exactly, totally.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Miriam, I'm sure you can relate a little bit to what Amanda's been expressing, because on the architecture team, you are more than familiar with change and more than familiar with having to communicate a convincing argument as to why change. So I was wondering if you could just speak to some of the major architecture changes Achievers has been through and some key points as to how you convinced people for the need for those changes.
As I mentioned, I joined Achievers back in 2011, and I've been in so many changes. I've seen so many changes. Just to highlight some of them, when I joined Achievers, in dev team, we were just one team, and we were 15 people. Now we are about 80 developers, and we are about 8 to 9 team and sub-team overall. Our release cycle back then was minimum 3 to 4 months for each release. We had one dedicated QA team that they were just doing manual testing on every release that we had. Right now we have continuous deployment and we have 3 different pipeline that is running. We have at least 3 deployment in a day. We don't have any QA team anymore, and these are all the changes that happened during past 8 years. In terms of company strategies, so they decided that we want to go globally. At the time, we just had one office in Toronto. Now we have office in US, UK, Australia, and we have clients all over the globe. So we needed the change application to support different time zone everywhere. And also now we are supporting, back then we were just supporting English and French. Now we are supporting more than 20 languages. It was just because that we are going globally and we needed to support all the changes. Right now, there is a need, we see that there is a need to go to towards like having different services and going through Microsoft technology. So we are about to starting a big journey to start going with microservices technology.
Yeah. So quite a few changes.
But one fun fact, the only change that is consistent for me is I'm still having same manager that I started back in 2000. I'm still reporting to the same person. That was the only consistent.
So just a little bit as to how do you convince an organization that these kind of changes are necessary?
I couldn't agree more with Amanda. As she mentioned, it's just communication. We need to come before we start any changes. We need to communicate with people in different department, different team, with our own team, and we need to convince them why we need to have this change.
Right. Over communication is not a thing. So speaking of big changes, Achievers is now moving towards creating offshore development teams to support our current development teams. This decision initially was a little contentious in the organization. And Amit, I know that you were part of communicating this decision. So who exactly needed convincing for this?
So before I answer this question, I'm going to tell you about when I told my first daughter that we were having another daughter. And so this is, and so she asks me, I tell her, so I have something to share with you, you know, you're going to have a sibling soon. And so she just freaks out. She says, okay, so that means you won't love me anymore? You're going to love this little girl now? And I was like, no, the love is just going to, you know, multiply and you'll have even more love from your parents. And she understood. And so I think the idea is to communicate early, be transparent, make it amply visible, and make sure that you are talking about the objectives behind the change. So Achievers is going through an amazing period of growth, and we have too much work and too few people and a very, very hot Toronto market. And so we're looking of ways to expand our teams, and we're right now looking at teams, whether it's in Halifax or Edmonton or El Salvador or Bangalore, wherever we can find talent, and we can find talent quickly because we need help. We need to build stuff that the market is asking us to build. Otherwise, we miss out on the opportunity cost. And so if you lay out the objectives for the growth, you make sure that you're carrying the teams with you. You find champions. You figure out the few key people who have gone through this and have seen the benefits of having distributed teams. You make sure that you are doing your job, and then the champions are taking that forward. The idea is to just be clear, be transparent, and hopefully the team will understand and they'll see the fruit.
Yeah, I think for me, when we were first hearing about that change, what ultimately led me to accept it, even though I was a little hesitant at first, was all of the sessions that we had where we discussed it and we were able to talk about how we felt personally. So just on that note, how are we planning to reconcile this decision with people who are maybe still a little bit hesitant about moving forward with offshore development teams?
Yeah, I think everybody has a journey. You will have early adopters, you will have naysayers, you will have people who are hesitant but excited. And I think you have to make sure that you're carrying everybody with you. And sometimes, things just have to fall in place. And put in motion for people to see the benefit out of it. And hopefully there'll be enough growth opportunities for everybody in the team that they'll finally see why this is beneficial for everybody.
Right. So I think the takeaways surrounding how to build your case for change would be, one, communicate, 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 and be open and honest when you communicate. Two, make sure that you justify and explain why you're making the change. Otherwise, people are going to be left unsure and unclear as to why we even need to make it. And three, find champions. Find people who will be on your side and be encouraging people to feel positively about the change. So at this point, we'll open it up. If anybody in the audience has questions surrounding building a case for change and how to answer why make a change in the first place.
Right. So we have a team of about, I'd say at this point we are about 70 engineers, and the amount of investment that the business wants to put into technology is amplified every year, and we are always constantly behind in hiring because we're not able to find the talent. And so the idea is that we want to be able to go into a location where it's the access to talent is easier. For example, in Bangalore or El Salvador or Halifax, which is the University of Alberta is churning out a lot of tech talent annually. And so the idea would be to look at other opportunities where we can hire talent quickly.
Yeah, and I think just the most important thing for me in accepting that change was knowing that what we have here in Toronto and in San Francisco wasn't changing. We were still going to be hiring here. Everybody is still going to stay here. Like, this part is staying the same, but we're just basically expanding where we are.
Yeah, just because we have a new baby in the house doesn't mean we are going to send you back to the hospital, right? So that's the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to summarize that, it was when you have this outsourcing and people here are looking for a salary increase, how do you justify that when you are outsourcing and maybe that's going to be a little more cost effective?
So just a point of clarification, we are not outsourcing. Mm-hmm. We are building our own captive unit in an alternate location. So we are going to hire Achievers employees in an alternate location, which is slightly different from outsourcing. We're not going to a third-party provider and saying, we just need you to put like bodies and solve this problem, short-term problem for us. We are scaling the business. Right. There is a rate card benefit, but the idea is to leverage the quality and the availability of talent. Yes, there's a rate card benefit, and you can do more in certain locations than you can in Toronto. Yes. That, and as long as you're transparent about it, I think people understand.
So that was on why change. The second question that we want to address when going through big changes is who and what is impacted. So you need to identify the potential impact the change will have on culture, attrition, clients, employees. You need to know and acknowledge that there are risks, what the risks are, and how you plan to mitigate. So I just want to talk to Lynn here for a second. You've been part of building up our engagement platform since before it was even a fully fledged idea. In fact, for about 5 months, you were working on it by yourself, just on the initial architecture. And I know we've spoken a little bit about some of the challenges that were involved in that. Having sort of like a brand new platform inside of a pre-existing company. So on the one side, you've got this startup, fail fast mentality, and on the other side, there's already processes and standards in place that might sort of prevent that. And there is a certain level of risk that has to be addressed. So what did you do to allow our engagement platform to keep moving despite some of the risks involved?
Good question. I'm going to steal your analogy with the children because I thought it was really great. It kind of fits into my personal situation. I have 2 children, 9 and 11, and we just had a baby recently too. And they came and asked, are you going to love us less? And I said, yeah, unfortunately. It's just the way it is. But no, cut that out of the video. My wife will be watching. So please. So if you recall back to that curve that Larissa had earlier, it had a little bit of the states of changes, or the state of emotion as you go through change. And it's sort of similar to that when you are working at a company. If you can think of an established company and you split that curve in the middle, the established company would tend to be on the left-hand side when it comes to dealing with change. They're more resistant. They're scared that it will affect the bottom line, that things are going to disrupt them. Whereas on the right-hand side, left-hand side, I got it all mixed up, sorry. On this side is where the startups generally exist. They're more receptive to change. In fact, they're probably trying to change something about the industry themselves or creating a new industry. So where we're coming out, where Achievers has been an established company for a couple of years already and has revenue, has money, has customers, they can tend to be on that side of the scale when it comes to change. But at the same time, we were a startup, therefore we still have a lot of that startup mentality. And when we decided to build a brand new offering with the engagement platform, we also had to shift that product onto that side of the change scale. So what that meant was that as the developer on that platform, when Amit came and asked me to start up this project, was to ensure him that there would be a delineation, sort of a buffer, to separate the changes that would happen from the new product and the existing product, because we don't want to mess things up on that side. What that meant was we had to take a two-prong approach. One was a technological approach. We had to build technological solutions in order to implement those changes. And then we also had to look at it from a people side. So we had a people-focused approach. The technological approach was trying to make sure this existing product would not impact any of the stuff that, for example, Miriam was working on. It wouldn't bring down our recognition platform, all the changes we did. So we invented a couple of new technologies that helped us sideload our code into our existing product, so we were able to leverage it. But it it was helped by using some newer technology out there called the containerization. So Docker was a key piece of technology to help us further separate and isolate the technological concerns. And a lot of that was just going through and speaking with Amit, ensuring that, yeah, this new stuff is not going to break through those things.
Yeah, we wanted to make sure that we could build something on the side and inject this new product into the old product for users to use, but still have its own deploy cadence, still push things, fail fast
Exactly.
on some of these things, but still keep the bread and butter platform alive and gung ho for the existing users.
Exactly. We weren't tied to the cadence that they were having, which is push 3 times a day. We could go at our own pace, making sure things worked, and that helped a lot that way. The other side was the people strategy, which was, if you notice inside an established company, everyone kind of has their role, more or less, on what they do. We have like IT, we have SRE, the site reliability engineers, we have database people on that. The strategy that we had on the engagement platform was that we had to wear many hats. So the people that were implementing change had to be able to embrace change by being able to do all sorts of roles that were not necessarily part of our job title. So that was one of the strategies we had to go so that we wouldn't have to task and pull in outside resources. We could be self-sufficient that way.
So in this case, just talking about the who and what is impacted, you actually took the time to create a solution that would ensure that people in the pre-existing platform weren't impacted and wouldn't have to suffer negative impacts from a potential failure of the startup new platform, right?
That is exactly it. And like we said, the containerization technology, which we helped embrace with Docker, helped us separate from our existing code bases. And it also allowed us as people to take on those many roles because we were able to experiment as a database engineer, as a site security engineer, just testing all the different stacks that were available to us.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think some of the key takeaways on who and what is impacted and how to address it is understanding people might be concerned about a change and there might be risks that impact them. You have to address those, and you do have to do your due diligence to ensure that you're not going to let those risks affect or harm them in any way, because with any change, there is potential for a negative, and as long as you're aware of that and you're showing people that you have a plan in case negatives arise, people will be more comfortable with changes. So we can go ahead and open it up. If anybody has any questions surrounding who and what is impacted, how to answer this question, go ahead. So how many people work out of Toronto and how many people work out of our other offices?
So at the moment, the entire technology team is in Toronto, but we have an office in San Francisco where we have some salespeople and some marketing people. The same thing, we have an office in UK where we have a small sales team and a service team delivering the services that customers require, and a team in Australia. But the technology team is all of it's in Toronto at the moment.
So just moving on to the third question that we recommend you address when implementing a change, and that's how will you support change? Changes require resources, and you have to be aware and identify what resources are necessary in order to change. This might mean money, it might mean time, hiring new people, training or coaching. So going back to the microservices and our upcoming plan to move towards that, obviously any kind of architecture change is going to end up transforming a code base, but it's also going to transform the mentality in which people have to approach code. So Miriam, could you talk a little bit about creating a follow-up plan for that upcoming change?
And before I answer your question, I want to talk about our existing application and why we decided to go with microservices. Sure. So our existing application platform is one huge source code monolithic application with lots of daily commits and to that source code. And it's performing well, and we are shipping fast because we have continuous delivery and we are deploying 3 times in a day. But why we decide, if everything works well, why we decided to go through microservices? It's been a while that we noticed that it's hard to manage our source code, and our changes, it's hard to make a change because whatever we are changing here, we don't know where we are impacting. We may break things somewhere else. As we are dealing with lots of legacy code, they are about 10 years old, and everyone, I think, dealing with the same situation. So that's one of the reasons. So we decided to go. That's one of the reasons that we decided to go with microservices, because we can have different services, smaller services, and each team can own their own services, and they can manage all the changes. That was one of the reasons. The other reason, as Lynn mentioned, now we are adding more application to our platform. So they started our engagement platform, and we need to share our clients' data between all the application that we have. And so far we are doing some things here and there, some sort of hacking, but at the end it would be great that we have services that we can with those services, we can share data between all different applications, our mobile application and everything else. That's another reason. And also, as I mentioned, it's hard to make a change. There are lots of new technology they are really beneficial for us. But considering that we have this old code, it's hard for us even to move through new technology. These are all the reasons that we decided to go to microservices. And so how we started, it was about 1.5 years ago that our architecture team started doing some research and investigation on what is microservices and what are the benefits of that we can get out of it. So we start discussing, after we did our own research, we start discussing with people who already have this experience. We talk with different companies, our parent companies, some companies that we know. We discussed with people and we asked for their experience and good and bad and all those stuff. After that, we define what microservices means for achievers. As you know, microservices has different definition for different people and different design. It was really important that we know where we want to go with that. The next step for us was communicating with developers. So we start communicating with everyone that this is the next step for us. We also had, like a few months back, we had an innovation date that we asked all our dev to come up with what they think they would be next step for our platform. And surprisingly, everyone came up with the next step for us is going through microservices and having different services. That was really good initiative. And then we need to start build up our team, right? We start hiring people who are expert and who have experience, who've been through this experience before. We start hiring in architecture team, in DevOps team, in SRE team, different team to build up and be ready for this big change. And also, our senior managers start communicating this change with our senior leadership and talking about the business values that this change will bring for us. So overall, I think when it comes to change, people always looking to what benefit them, this change benefit them, and it's very important that we explain them this is what you will get out of this change, and this is the benefit that you will get out of it, company and yourself as individual. And we communicated this clearly with all our developers, and we're gonna have some training, book club, any session that it's involve training for the next step, because they need to learn new languages. Right now we are doing PHP, but the plan is with the new microservices we are going through 2 different new languages, and it's going to be a huge change for our developers, and they are all excited for this change.
Right. So when making a big change like this, number one, what I'm hearing is engagement. You have to engage first the leaders and then the community in the change and let them be part of the decision. 2, you have to help them understand what's in it for them. And 3, just making sure that you're always communicating, and then also providing necessary training so that they're not left like, now what? Right. Amazing. So just going back to engaging the leaders and engaging the community, we have a little bit of a recommendation on the roles different people will play in a change. So at the leadership level, the role is really about communicating the big picture and showing them the vision for the change. At the management level, communicating strategy, removing blockers, and being very involved in the change. And then at the champions level, proving the impact of the change on a day-to-day basis and being a resource for people to go to when that change is being implemented. So just diving into a sort of difficult change achievers had to go through. Last year, we went through the departure of a very beloved CTO who was kind of, I guess, an icon for the development team. And I know this impacted a lot of our developers on a very personal level, including me. So Amit, I was just wondering, can you talk about some of the steps you took to provide support to our development team after such a big organizational change?
Yeah, it's hard to lose a senior leader, but let's do a quick recap. So a new product, backend being re-architected into microservices, a brand new user experience, and that's a lot of change at one time. And on top of that, the CTO bolts. He asks us to do all of these things, and then he's out the door. But it is hard. Jokes apart, he was here for 10 years, and he had built some of the more fundamental parts of the platform himself. And he was the technical visionary and the strategic mind behind most of the decisions that we've made over the years. And it's hard to, when you lose somebody like that. Personally, for me, I looked up to him for most of the decision making, and I was the person who was executing on the ground, right? And when you lose somebody like that, then you have to yourself step up and take both those roles. One of the things that I did was, for example, we had somebody come in, a change coach come in, and talk to us about this exact curve that all of you saw, and take us through the journey of how we perceive change and how we can equip ourselves to deal with change by different strategies. So I think that was helpful, even though I think as a community, engineers are not very comfortable with sharing their feelings, but I think it was a powerful exercise to do for all of us. The other thing is some of these things just take time, and you have to give people the space and hopefully they get over it. I know I'm finding it hard, but hopefully time will be a good healer.
Yeah, I know. I think that when that change management counselor came in, that helped a lot of us. It really did help me to kind of see the opportunity available in such a big change, and ultimately pointed towards the bigger picture and the fact that although we lost the CTO, maybe something good could come out of it. So yeah, I think ultimately it's just helping show the vision behind the change, and providing the emotional support that goes along with the different reactions surrounding change. So Neil, you had a little bit of a different perspective from Amit as a manager of people as opposed to a manager of managers. And you've had more one-on-one time and dealt with the concerns of our teams on a more personal level. So I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how offering support as a manager looks different than offering support as a senior leader.
Yeah, sure. So I think before I talk about how I support my teams, managers are people too. So I'll talk a little bit about how I kind of supported myself.
Are they? Oh. It's debatable.
That's what I like to tell myself. So using the CTO leaving as an example, the way because I worked with the CTO for about 6 years. I've been here for 6 years, and then as Amit said, he gave us all his work to do, and then he bolted and left. So there's an emotional reaction to that. It's like this guy, he's leaving, he's abandoning us. So there's, I think with any big change, there's that emotional reaction that you have to it. And I think for me, how I deal with a big change like that is to kind of recognize that, that change happened, I have this emotional reaction, but then just thinking about that change in a logical way and separating the emotion from it. So using the CTO again as an example, he was here for 6 years, but towards the end of, he was here longer than that, but towards the end of his stay here at Achievers, he was actually not just the CTO of Achievers. He was also doing a lot of things for our parent company. And towards the end of his stay here, he was heavily involved with a lot of those things in the parent company. Us here at Achievers, we were doing a lot of the grunt work. And so when thinking about him leaving, I kind of realized that there's still a lot of good people left here at Achievers, and we're all capable people. And even though he's leaving, we're still capable, and we can keep this thing going. So in recognizing that kind of helped me deal with the change. And with that being said, in terms of supporting other people, everyone is an individual and they absorb change in different ways. So also recognizing that fact, and as Larissa was mentioning, one-on-one time, sitting down with people, listening to their concerns, their questions, using the way I deal with change to kind of have those discussions in that kind of manner, I think is helpful in supporting other people. But also another thing that my outlook on change personally is very, very positive. So I like change. It's part of the reason why I got involved in software development, is just the constant change is something that I enjoy. So also bringing that to the table in terms of supporting other people and having that positive outlook on change. And I always try to see what could potentially be the outcomes or opportunities that are good and positive that can result from a change. So I think with any change, even though things on the surface might seem a little daunting and maybe negative at first, I think there's always light at the end of the tunnel and opportunities that can be had from any change. So I try and take that and kind of project that outwards to my team whenever we're having discussions about changes.
So as a manager, it's really all about checking in with your team regularly, hearing them out and allowing them to express their feelings, but helping them maybe reframe some of their uncomfortable feelings from negative to positive, and see, even though maybe you can say, here's the worst thing that can happen, but what is the best thing that can happen?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Awesome. So just to wrap up the things that we were hoping to communicate around how we feel is a great way to approach change. Number one, answer why change. Have open communication, communicate, a clear goal, and find champions. Address who and what is impacted, and create a plan to prove that you will address the risks. And have an idea of how you're going to support the change going forward. If it's worth the change, it's worth the investment in resources, whether that means time, money, new hires. Check in regularly with emotions, whether that be through a change management coach or one-on-ones. And really seek out the opportunity in change. If you can have a positive outlook on change, you can help other people to also have a positive outlook on change. There are always potential for negatives, but there's a huge potential for positives. And a company that doesn't embrace change won't go anywhere. So it's very important. Now we'll just go ahead and open it up to questions from the audience. So here's a list of the panelists in case you have a specific question for one of them. Yes?
We have a huge application. It's not a small. So there was lots of discussion where we should start. So we talk with lots of people. We want to start with one piece from our existing application. We may break stuff because right now we are in contract with lots of clients, and we have lots of responsibility regards them, and our platform is up and running, so we need to make sure that we are not breaking anything. That's why we decided to start with a really small piece that is not related to our applications, like a product feed, and that we can learn, build our template. We need to build lots of basic services for authentication, for logging, for sharing permission that we already have, for so many other stuff. We need to build all those base services that we can be able to share among all the services. You don't have this problem when you're dealing with a small application, but when you have a mature application, there are lots of areas that we need to consider. We are not duplicating. That's what we try not to do, to not duplicate things. We try to just use one base services for all of them, because we don't want to end up implementing things over and over for each services, because we know that we are ending up with having 100 services, more than 100 services.
So I think you have a very good question. You're right. it is not difficult to start, but it is difficult to scale that to an organization which has 70 odd developers, and that's what we're trying to get ahead of. So how do we create a plan? Yes, we can start, like a small team of 3 people can absolutely start and build a service and put it out there and see how it works and learn from it. But then how do you take it forward, and how do you create a template that others can follow? That is the challenge, and that's what we're trying to get ahead of at this point, is how do we, as we learn, so when you're in a startup or when you're in a smaller team, you're able to do things a little more organically. Whereas when you're a little mature like we are, you have to think about the $500 million of goods that are flowing through our platform, and be cognizant of the fact that we can't really afford to take missteps as much as a new company could. And I think that's what the challenge is, and that's what we're trying to get ahead of. And as far as the shared services is concerned, that's not a challenge today, but that is another thing we're trying to get ahead of. As we build new products, we want to make sure that we have all of these services in place that can be leveraged by new products that we build without having to duplicate that code in every application.
Even without speaking about to the microservices problem, we deal with that issue of managing dependencies all the time already out of the microservice context. For example, Neil works on the mobile platform team. One of his teams is the mobile platform, and we work on the API side of things. If we do something that he depends on, it completely breaks the application. And vice versa, if he needs anything like a new feature, for example, let's say we need to put our engagement platform on there, that is a conversation that has to happen between our 2 teams. And right now, at the scale we're at, it's not too big of a problem, because it's just a matter of the stakeholders having conversations with each other, and then either impressing upon like the priority of it. If it's not a big priority, it doesn't have to go in right away. It gets deprioritized. Otherwise, we work together as two separate teams to make sure that things are being released in sync with each other. So even without the whole conversation of microservices, it's something that us as an organization, we're dealing with it every day already. And the theme of it has been communication, and that is the key thing, either through documentation, through releasing the API list, or they even have visibility into our release schedule cycle too, so they know when certain things are going to come, so they can plan for it that way. Versus a third party, you never know when they're going to push something out. They can say, hey, this is coming in Q3, whatever. Neil can just come, hey, when's this coming out? And then we can either say, okay, how important is it, push back, or just assist them along. So it's just one of those things. As we go towards microservices and as we go to scale, we as an organization will have to have a process around that. And I think it's just, we'll just evolve with that too. So hopefully that muddies the water a little.
Any other questions?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie. We have very large customers in the automotive industry, in the banking industry, who are used to being able to customize a ton of better software. And we will it will be an uphill battle to wean them off of all of these configurations. And to move them into this more responsive, this more modern UI. What I'm doing as a product manager to sort of get ahead of that is I am communicating to them even now. Like, we're not planning to migrate them to this new platform until likely 2021, but I'm sharing with them mock-ups with designs. I'm communicating to them some of the benefits of migrating over to this new platform and getting them excited about this, and telling them that their employees are actually expecting this of them, and like for them to stay on the old platform will actually be a detriment. So I'm trying to push as much as I can, and as we talked about earlier, to over communicate and to communicate earlier on. But I'm not going to lie, it's going to be an uphill battle for sure. Yeah, we're doing a lot of testing, a lot of user interviews, a lot of prototypes. So we have a big customer conference coming up in about a month, and we're planning to demonstrate, actually have prototypes on devices that we will put in the hands of customers and get their feedback on what we've built. And then if they don't like it, we'll go back to the drawing board and iterate. That's really all that we can do. Yeah.
In a
Good
way,
question.
with your change, it's almost like you're answering these 3 questions for our customers, in addition to our organization.
It's going to be interesting. So check back with me in about 5-6 months, and I'll let you know how it's been.
So I think we have time for one more question. If anyone has any.
That's a very good question, and I think one of the things that I remember clearly was when we call this project Osiris, by the way. So if you hear me use that word, that is a mnemonic for our UX overhaul. And when we first, when the product team first announced that to the engineering team, it did not go as well as we had hoped it would, because I think the engineering team felt that they were not part of the process of coming up with those designs. And so I think one of the things that we've since done is we've had a lot of conversations with one-on-one conversations. The designer has actually sat down with a lot of the engineers one-on-one, and then I've taken them through the research that went into those designs and their thought process, and I think it has helped a little bit. But that was one of the things that didn't go well. I think it was I think we've learned from that we needed to communicate even earlier than we did, and you live and learn.
One of the things that I want to add is we lost lots of friends during all these changes. Some people left us, but at the same time we got new friends. Lots of new people, new talent that join us, but it's always hard to, when you're working for people for a long time, you're losing them because of all these changes. But the good side is you're getting new people.
The other thing that did not go well from an organization perspective, so when we moved from quarterly releases to then releasing every sprint, to releasing every day, to releasing three times a day, the side effect was that we were not able to do like a giant marketing exercise behind the release. So when we were releasing quarterly, we were able to go out into the market to our customers and say, "Oh, look at all these features that we are bringing up." And then when you do continuous delivery, you lose those milestones and the ability to create a celebration around the release. And the one thing that didn't go well was we did not anticipate this happening. So we should have gotten ahead of it and should have created some kind of an artificial release to keep that excitement going. Still do continuous delivery, but figure out a way to still get the market excited. That is the one learning I would say for us from an organization level.
And even like just taking it back a little bit from excitement, we got a lot of, so we as in product, we got a lot of pushback from our customer support teams who told us, it's great that you're releasing all these features every day, but like, you didn't even give me a chance to talk to my customer about it. Like, all of a sudden this new feature appeared in the platform and I'm having to like explain to them why this feature came about and like, what is the rationale behind it. And so like, it put us in a little bit of an awkward position, and yeah, exactly what Amit said. Like, we learned from that, and we learned to over-communicate and to communicate early on about upcoming changes and to really make a big splash about it.
And I think that just about wraps it up. So thank you everyone so much for coming. We couldn't do this without you guys who come and support us. And we really appreciate the Toronto tech community and want to give back through these tech talks. So we hope that you enjoyed yourself, and most importantly, we hope you took something away from this. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.